A new NPR investigation has uncovered how a political consulting firm known as Matrix LLC paid a veteran ABC News freelancer to put out propaganda on behalf of Florida's giant utility company known as Florida Power and Light. Now, look, we talk about corruption in both politics and the media quite often. This takes it to another level though, because while I do think that advertising and corporate sponsorships have an impact on the type of reporting you see from various outlets, in this case, you have a political consulting firm that has been basically hired or used by a utility company, just giving the reporter cold hard cash directly to do a hit job on political candidates who advocate for, protecting water, protecting the environment. And it's amazing because these stories mostly focus on conservative Republicans, because we are talking about Florida after all. So let's get to the details here. Now, in 2018, the ABC freelancer, veteran freelancer, was paid by Matrix LLC to do a story that claimed that gopher tortoises were found dead at a nearby construction site. Now, the gopher tortoises are important here because they're considered an endangered species by the state of Florida. So they have additional protections and regulations related to the animals. Now, the reporter here decided, and her name is Kristen Hentschel. She decided to show up to a debate that a particular political candidate that was targeted by the utility company allegedly was debating at. This was the candidate for the Florida House of Representatives, and the debate was in July of 2018. Okay, so Toby Overdorf was the name of the candidate who was being targeted here. And he's known as an environmental engineer and wildlife consultant to the construction project in question. The construction project was to expand a hospital, and the allegation here is that through the expansion of this property, the endangered species here, the gopher tortoises, were found dead. Okay, now let's get to some of those details. The city investigation, I should note, found no dead tortoises. In fact, it found no evidence at all that any of the reptiles had ever even been present. But that didn't stop Kristen Hentschel from doing what she was paid to do. She goes to this debate. She basically immediately ambushes this candidate and get a load of what the report looked like.
Attorney Virginia Sherlock has seen and worked on these kinds of issues in the past, and even her office is getting emails and calls about dead tortoise at the construction site.
It happens because nobody's watching, nobody's monitoring, nobody's paying attention.
So who is supposed to be paying attention? Meet Toby Overdorf. He happens to be running for the House District 83 seat. That district represents Martin County and most of eastern St. Lucie County.
I'm a biologist. I actually have my master's degree in biology. I have an environmental MBA, so I'm kind of perfectly suited to deal with those issues.
We caught up with Overdorf before a recent debate, who we should also mention is one of the hospital's paid environmental consultants on this project.
I've been all over the site. There are no dead tortoises on the site. I don't know what that has to do with today's debate.
Overdorf didn't have much to say about the tortoise. If anything, he was a little choked up.
I don't know where this tip came from. I don't know anything about it.
Now, the video was scrubbed from the YouTube channel it was posted on. NPR luckily grabbed it before it was erased from any public record, and that's how I was able to obtain it myself. And the report that she did wasn't for ABC. So ABC News has nothing to do with this. It's just that this reporter is known for her work on Good Morning America. Again, she's a veteran freelancer for ABC News. But in this case, the propaganda report that she put out that made unfounded claims just to do this hit job on this candidate was the Center for Sustainability and Conservation. That was the outlet, which by the way isn't a thing. It's just completely made up. Okay, she's done other videos for them as well. But let's get back to Overdorf here, because he's a conservative Republican. So I'm sure I disagree with him on a lot of things. But it turns out that there are some things I do agree with him on, including the need to protect our environment, to protect our water. And he was, in fact, an environmental consultant for that project, for that property expansion. And so what she tried to do there was make it seem as though he's not credible in what he does as an environmental consultant, that his lack of oversight on the project led to this 20 of these gopher tortoises dying, which turns out was a complete lie. That's not true. Not a single one died. In fact, they weren't even on the site to begin with. So what's going on, right? Well, it turns out Florida's utility wanted to go after this guy because what he was advocating for might be a little inconvenient for them. So let's talk about how much Kristen made off that report. And by the way, excellent reporting by NPR here. I think these types of stories are super important. Matrix LLC had paid Kristen Hentschel at least $7,000, the firm's internal ledgers show. And Matrix billed 2 major companies for her work, labeling the payments for Florida Crystals FPL. Florida Crystals is a huge sugar conglomerate. FPL is shorthand for the giant utility Florida Power and Light. So why would they want to go after this candidate, who, by the way, won anyway? So good for him. Again, probably disagree with him on all sorts of things, but I don't really like hit pieces like this, especially when there's some moneyed interest behind it. I think that's incredibly gross, and I'm glad that it didn't end up impacting his candidacy. Now, both companies could have benefited from her efforts to undermine Overdorf and his promises to resolve environmental issues in the district he was vying to represent. Florida Power and Light has pushed back against efforts to bring solar panels to the Sunshine State, while runoff from the sugar industry is a major source of water pollution in Florida. Now, Hentschel has produced a bunch of other videos for the alleged Center for Sustainability and Conservation. NPR also obtained some financial documents showing that a shell company set up by Matrix paid the group, okay, this Center for Sustainability and Conservation, $55,000. Its online presence, by the way, deleted as soon as NPR reporters started asking some questions. Gee, I wonder why. But they were smart enough to make a copy of the footage and the videos and all of that prior to them scrubbing the web. See, that's the thing about the internet. What you post on there typically stays there forever, whether you think it does or not. Now, Hentschel has also gone after US Representative Brian Mast of Florida. Again, another politician that I've got no love for. But you gotta go after politicians for legitimate reasons. You can't just make things up or go after them specifically because you're a paid journalist by utility companies that want to destroy the politician. And that's what happened here, I think, based on the reporting. Now, NPR doesn't go so far as to make that specific claim, but I am going to say that I believe that is what's going on here. US Representative Brian Mast of Florida, a conservative Republican, has established a record as an advocate of strengthening water quality in Lake Okeechobee, which, by the way, the best named lake in the country, the state's largest freshwater lake. He has introduced 4 pieces of legislation to address toxic algae blooms there. And she chased him down as well and decided during a fundraiser he was at in 2020 to ask him about offensive social media posts that had surfaced earlier, that he had already apologized for and had already been adjudicated, but she just decided to focus her line of questioning on that. The conservative Florida news site, The Capitalist, which, by the way, is also part of Matrix LLC and this whole media nonsense, called Mast's water proposals extreme and urged readers to vote for his Democratic opponent. Matrix had previously funneled The Capitalist nearly $200,000 from Florida Power and Light, the firm's invoices show. So that's what's happening right now. And the cynicism that Americans feel toward the press is warranted. And what's so sick is that when these stories come out, it only reinforces the cynicism, the lack of faith in journalism in this country, the unwillingness to believe just reporters and journalists overall because of the bad actors who would rather take a measly $7,000 to potentially destroy another person's life on behalf of moneyed interests. And that's what happened here. And so ABC, again, had nothing to do with this. But now that ABC News knows that one of their veteran freelancers is a propagandist for hire, really hope they reconsider employing her for other reports in the future. Because this is beyond unethical, this is corruption, and this is not journalism.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.